Hey, my name is Corey Cotton, and today I'm going to present my case study project. So the organization I decided to do my case study project on is Baton Rouge Cardiology Center, or BRCC for short. So Baton Rouge Cardiology Center is a cardiologist clinic here, based here in Baton Rouge, and it was founded in 1985. And originally, 3 of the cardiologists in the area who were working in the area came together in 1973, and later in 1985 they formed the clinic, what is now known as BRCC. Shortly after, in 1986, they actually moved to their current facility on Brittany Drive, and they've expanded since then. Baton Rouge Cardiology Center is a for-profit, independently and privately owned cardiology clinic here in Baton Rouge. And the person that I decided to conduct my interview with is actually my mother, who is currently a registered nurse on staff at Baton Rouge Cardiology Clinic. So now I'm going to provide a little background information on the clinic. Some of the key executives in the clinic include Martin Bubby Fisher, who was the first CEO of Baton Rouge Cardiology Center and currently remains in that same position today. Shortly after opening, they hired their first office administrator, Ken Walker, who is currently still in that position today. And in 1993, Baton Rouge Cardiology Center opened their first cath lab, which is for diagnosed heart condition patients. And shortly after that, they began to expand even more by opening satellite clinics around the southern parts of Louisiana. And I consider both of those 2 key milestones within the structure of this organization, as they were huge for expansion and getting the organization to the point where they're at today. So now I'm going to talk about some of the main IT functions and infrastructures here at Baton Rouge Cardiology Clinic. The main system that they use is GEMS, and they use that for both their hardware and software. And it is used to help store their electronically medical records for their patients. They also use GEMS for scheduling patients' appointments and also emails. Another function that they use is Microsoft Excel. They actually just started that recently, where they built in patient data into Microsoft Excel that tracked patients who had cardiac devices affected by device companies' recalls and advisories. So they would put in their bunch of different information, like their device serial number, and just into one big spreadsheet in order to track all that patient information. They had to actually do this because GEMS didn't have the features and functions available to properly sort this data and run it, and so this was actually hand put into Microsoft Word by one of the employees. And that kind of gets me into my next point of, I consider that a limitation within the current infrastructure at Baton Rouge Cardiology Center. It just puts a hassle on the employee having to do that, and it's just based off of their one PC, and it's not cloud-based. So, if something were to happen to that PC, or if they lose that information, they wouldn't have it saved anywhere else to store that data. Also, another infrastructure is they use an on-premise traditional VPN with built-in servers on their Baton Rouge location. And I also consider that sort of a limitation, because if the servers go down there, then employees on and off the premise are left without any working system. And so now I'm going to talk about some of the changes that I think should be made just when switching over to the cloud, what structures that I think would be best suited for that. And first, I think that the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet data that stores all the patients' device serial numbers and all that information should be immediately switched to Google Docs or some other form of cloud-based spreadsheets. And I think this is a pretty easy transition that the company should make, one that's fairly simple, and just for the reason that, like I said before, it's stored on one person's PC, and if something happened on that PC, they'd lose that data altogether. So having that through the cloud-based function allows not only for it to be backed up, but shared through all the employees who need to access that information simultaneously and can make updates and adjustments to it regularly. So I think that's one key aspect. I also think switching over from a traditional-based VPN on the premise to a cloud-based VPN or even a VPC would also be a smart idea. I know that's one that logistically is not easy to do right away, but I think it would also allow for their remote workers to have better working conditions, as it'll create more flexibility and scalability within the company, and also provide more security down the road for the company. And then finally, I think they just need to retire their GEMS hardware and software system and completely scrape it and restart with a new system that a lot of other cardiology places use in the region right now, which is called Merge. And for example, LCA, Louisiana Cardiology of Associates, actually just implemented this system, a complete cloud-based system, and this just helps to track and store the patient's data information, and allows for more functions and features that GEMS didn't. So instead of even having to use Microsoft Word or any Google Doc to store all that patient information, it would already be provided on to Merge. And so I think that's another solution that the company should look at switching to the cloud. And so now finally I want to talk about overall why the company should switch to cloud-based. Like I've talked about before, all these switches will provide more improved, reliable performance on their servers and also their devices that they're using. With this becomes instant updates throughout the software that they're using and not having to wait for that. Also gives them more storage capacity and more data reliability within the organization. And overall, I think that would make for a lot more efficient business for Baton Rouge to operate in. And I know it's not an easy transition, but I think it's something that they should definitely look into. And with that, I'm finished.